Welcome to Tales from Tubi.
Hey Tubi friends! Welcome to a brand new episode of Tales from Tubi. For those of you who don't know what Tales from Tubi is where I take my love of Tubi and my love of horror movies and I bring them together in this nice series over here on Old Man Brad. And if you love the show, make sure you drop me a review on your favorite podcast app. I would love to hear what you think of the show. So this week, I'm doing another Tubi original, but I'm not doing it alone. I have a guest coming in to talk Killer Body Count with me. I want to welcome in Matt Konopka, or as some may know, the Killer Horror Critic. How you doing today, Matt?
I am excellent, and I am so excited to talk about a Tubi original with you because I feel like Tubi has started to up their game quite a bit this year. So.
They have. They had a good run of, Slay, this, Lowlifes. I know there's some others out there I'm missing, but they're like...
There are, but those three for me, I thought all three were legit fun times. Big step up from their Terror Train remake, which was one of their earlier releases.
Or the Asylum films. Nothing against the Asylum. You know, they make some entertainment, but yeah.
For sure, yeah. But yeah, definitely seen an up in Tubi's game.
But I want to thank you for coming on to chat this, and I want to ask, when I threw out to you to come on the show, you were thinking of some Tubi movies. What made you choose Killer Body Count?
Yeah, so I chose Killer Body Count because I feel like both Slay and Lowlifes kind of got their fanfare, and I feel like I haven't really seen much talk at all about Killer Body Count. And, you know, while I'm not going to sit here and lift the film up as being any kind of masterpiece, because it's not, I do think it's a very fun, queer film that does a lot of really great things with how it kind of inverts some slasher expectations and tropes. And it's a movie that I really enjoyed despite its flaws. So I wanted to bring that attention to your audience, and, you know, maybe they'll hopefully go check out a pretty decent, I think, queer slasher movie.
I can't agree more. Like, it was a surprise. Usually you knew what you got from Tubi, and this kind of changed things a little bit.
Yeah.
Before we jump further into Killer Body Count, I want to say, if you're in the Cincinnati area, come out to Frightful Fridays at the Esquire Theater. On the third Friday of the month, I host a horror screening. It's an absolute blast. Some of the films we've done previously, Blair Witch Project, Demon Knight, Blood Rage, just to name a few. And our screening for August is I Know What You Did Last Summer. I'm really excited to host this screening. I'm a big fan of the 90s teen slashers. But come out August 16th, 10 p.m. Let's watch a movie together. All right, so let's talk Killer Body Count.
What is this place?
Beautiful Savior Treatment Center.
Hello there!
You must be Cammy. The girls' rooms are in the main building. That's where the boys' cabin is.
See something you like?
Yeah. No phones allowed during treatment.
There's something not right about this place. Very.
It all depends on Cammy's willingness to change.
Sexual immorality, impurity, and debauchery.
How did you know what I did last Thursday? 20 years ago, a 17-year-old priest killed all the other kids, the nuns, everyone. There's no getting out of here.
Want to break some rules?
So much for rehab.
The devil followed me here.
The devil.
Mistaken for a sex addict by her devout father, Cammy is sent to an isolated rehab center, but when a killer begins to hunt the teens, Cammy realizes that her survival and her independence are intertwined in ways she could never imagine. So this is directed by Danishka Esterhazy, who also did two films that I love in the Banana Splits movie, which I think is underrated.
Yes, I agree.
And then her Slumber Party Massacre remake that she did, which I think was fantastic.
Very fun remake. I really enjoyed it.
Yes. And in this one, what I'll say between those three, they kind of have this look to them. they're clean and polished and almost feel made for TV, but almost like the budget's better, if that makes sense.
No, it does. I kind of go back and forth on how much I like or don't like that with her films, because they do have that sort of made for TV look. You know, the lighting is not what I would call excellent by any means, but like,
yes,
but it does. I think that at the same time, you know, it lends a certain style to her work that, you know, just makes a lot of what she does just have this extra sort of fun camp to it, right? Like,
yes.
Like, I feel like everything she touches, except for her film Level 16, which is a more serious piece by her that I actually remember really liking, though it's been a while. Aside from that, like, her work just has this very fun, kind of energetic quality to it. And I think that the look of it kind of helps accentuate that. So,
well, even this movie, she totes this line where it could almost go into campiness. Like, even some of the dialogue and the jokes that are thrown in there, it's like humor. It's funny, but it kind of totes the line of like, is it going to go super dumb and silly, or are we going to kind of go serious? And she kind of tilts it back, and we kind of get some serious tones, and it kind of wavers back and forth, which I like. I like that.
Yeah, no, it's really cleverly presented, because it definitely does, you know, walk that fine line of, this is very funny, potentially almost very stupid, but but it never crosses it to a degree where I feel like you could label the film as quote unquote dumb, because I actually think that there's a lot of really intelligent humor and commentary going on throughout it, that where even the more kind of campier elements, like, I think that they're actually really smart in kind of some of the humor that's being presented here. Like, I mean, the opening lines of the movie I just think are fantastic, where it's, you know, these two teenagers who have just, well, I guess we catch them just about finishing having sex, and the girl's like, is it supposed to feel like that? And the guy's like really good, and she's like, no, like really weird, you know. And it's just so funny how, because the film holds on to that. Like, this ends up being a movie partially about just kind of, you know, the female experience when it comes to sex, and how men are essentially, you know, lifted on a place of like, they're just treated better all around when it comes to it, you know, like men aren't looked at like whores if they sleep with 20 women, you know. Men aren't looked at, or men have this idea that like they're supposed to finish, and, you know, if the woman finishes, like, oh, that's just a bonus, I guess, you know. But which is all such bullshit. But
and there is a lot of that in there. Like, there is the comments of like, you know, one of the guys perceived as sleeping with a bunch of women, and he's like the stud. But if you have the girls, they're perceived as sleeping with a bunch of guys. Oh, they're just sluts. That's why they're here. It's because we gotta get this out of them. Right.
Yeah. And I mean, taking a concept like that and setting it at a church camp, I forget what the correct term for it is, but
usually they call them like conversion camps, more or less. To kind of like take that out of them, which that's a whole nother podcast we could get into.
Oh yeah, I mean, I could talk about that for days, but I mean, it's like, not only is it ridiculous, but also I just love the stupidity of like these religious characters who are like, oh, you know how we'll cure these kids of sex? Put a bunch of these horny teenagers together in an isolated camp where no one is watching them. That'll do it.
Well, I'll just say before we dig further that we're going to jump into spoilers, because I know we're going to talk about probably kills and certain scenes in the film and the characters and everything else. But just be forewarned, if you haven't seen it, we're going to dip into spoilers. So if you don't care, continue on. But I'll say, like, watching this movie, because I watched it again today, and like, it's a horny teenager movie. And a lot of like thinking back to when I was a teenager, that's not what teenagers are. I mean, they're horny teenagers, and just a lot of the comments. Like, I love what I think was hilarious in the movie is like the guys, they'll do things and they're like, oh, you want to do this? And then they'll sit there and go, all right, I'm into it. Whatever. Like, and it's just like, what?
Yeah. Like, I think one of them mentions having an orgy or something, and they're like, yeah, okay.
Yeah. Oh, the three of us. Oh, I'm into it.
So the thing about it, and one of the reasons I want to talk about the movie is I think it's a very refreshing approach to teenage sexuality because we're used to slashers from back in the day, when they reached the height of popularity in the 80s. Like we're used to slashers that always have teens exhibiting a sexuality, but they're punished for it, right? Like the whole idea behind behind sex in the 80s with slashers was have sex and die, that was never, as far as I know, Carpenter's intention or anything like that with Halloween, but that happened, and then everybody just said, okay, well, now that's just what it is. You have sex and die. And the refreshing thing about this film is that that's not what's going on here. This film is more about sexual positivity because the entire journey of Cammy's character is, about discovering that it is completely okay for her to feel the way that she does about sex, for her to be horny, for her to have sex, for her to have interest in men and women and whoever she is attracted to. It's a very freeing film in that sense. And I just feel like what's so fun about that is it fits into this kind of evolution of the slasher film for me, because we're not as used to, which sounds so crazy to say in 2024, but we're not as used to seeing female sexuality as positively presented in a horror film as it is here.
No, not at all. And I think it's funny that they kind of take the twist of this film, of the sexual, you have sex and die, but it isn't you just have sex and die. It's those who orgasm. They're the ones that die. Yeah. And then the whole movie, they can't say it. Like the girls, when you do and she's making noises, like they can't say the word.
Yeah.
What? But they had fun with it. And they were, I love that this story, like you said, like it's a positive side of female sexuality, of it isn't just, oh, he doesn't like me. Oh, woe is me. It's like, oh, I'm trying to discover myself, and there's things holding me inside, like the death of her mom. Like that's a big piece that's doing it. And her dad sending her to this camp. Then the teens die, and she gets to see some dark stuff happen, which the kills are great in this too.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it's one of the, which we'll definitely get to that because there's some really fun kills in here. But yeah, so like something that comes to mind right away is something like The Burning. Like I enjoy that movie, but something that always really bothered me about it is how, I forget the characters' names, but there's a woman early on in the film who she denies sex with one of the guys, and then he storms off all pissed off, and then she dies, and it almost kind of felt like she was being punished for not giving in to him. And here, it's so much different because right from the get-go, you have Cammy with the guy that I guess she's dating, and they're in the church basement together after she's punished.
Yeah.
For giving him the finger when he's in church, doing a little tongue flick at her. And she's down there, and like he wants her to go down on her, and she's like, yeah, I did that like the last
it's
3 times.
It's my turn.
It's time for my, pleasure. And that's just so rare, I feel like, to see in a movie like this, and it's something that Esterhazy brings to a lot of her work, because that was similar in Slumber Party Massacre remake, where, I feel like we really get to view this stuff from a woman's point of view and turn the male gaze into a female gaze on the men, or not a female gaze, but turn the gaze of the camera onto the men and objectify them, which is awesome.
I loved how she did that in Slumber Party Massacre. How they were like the slumber party, pillow fighting is
yes,
and they're looking at them like.
Right, and she does the same thing here, where she takes all of the girls and they're standing outside, the shower or whatever, peeking through the hole, like we're in a Porky sequel or something, and and it's all the men showering, and we get like man butt and stuff like that, and it's again, I hate to keep repeating myself, but it's like so refreshing to see this.
I think that's kind of what uplifted this movie. Like watching it a second time through, I forgot how horny the movie was from the first time I watched it.
Horny.
And second, I was just like, oh, they're like, when I said they're toting the line of making it comedic to not comedic. So there was a lot of it that was lighthearted, but then it gets serious and digs into, like, you know, Cammy's wrestling with, you know, originally she sees this guy that comes in. It's like, oh, yeah, okay, this is going to be okay because he's here. But then she meets this girl and she's like you can just tell this, oh, well, I'm attracted to her too. And the more she hangs out with her, she's like, oh, wait a second. I got this darkness in me. I'm confused. What do I do? But then as we go along, she discovers, like, oh, it's okay. It is okay.
Yeah, you know, it's one of those things of like I think for all of us, you know, sexuality is really confusing.
Oh yeah.
When you're younger, like no matter what your orientation is, like I feel like we're all kind of confused a little bit when we're kids with it. And so this movie really is like, it's not just about sex itself, but it's like, you know, it's a sexual journey of like discovering your sexuality, what you like, what you don't, you know, finding power in sexuality as opposed to, you know, like being abused with it or whatever, kind of the way that Cammy is with some of these men early on, where, you know, they try to make it all about themselves, and which I never understood men like that, because it's like, you know, I feel like a lot of times you get as good as you give. So
I think one of the guys even at one point says, I forgot, one of the girls said something to him and he was like, oh, that's life. Like, it's like, what?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember now too. I think I made a note about it somewhere, but she's basically like, you know, you got to go down on me too. And, or something about how men never get in trouble for the kind of stuff that women do when it comes to sex. And he's like, yeah, that's just life. And it's like, fuck you, man.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it is a lot of life, which sucks. It needs to change. But,
you know, unfortunately, we live in a stupidly male-dominated society that we're starting to, you know, hopefully finally crumble a little bit here. But it's reflected in this film of just kind of the things that men get away with when it comes to sex. And so I love that so much of this movie is just these women constantly pushing back against that and being like, no. I'm mad as hell. I'm not going to take it anymore. You know, like,
yeah.
It's
and all the while there is someone killing them in a devil mask and a black robe, almost Scream-esque, but the mask is obviously different. But yeah.
And how fitting too, right? For this being a film where it's like, oh, the church says it's a sin if you have sex before marriage, you know, especially if you're a woman, and then you've got a killer running around in a devil mask, like it's supposed to be punishing you for that sin, which ultimately makes, you know, the final confrontation with the devil mask killer and their comeuppance so much more satisfying. So.
The devil mask killers, I guess we're in spoilers, so I mentioned this before, like I thought it had great kills in it, and one of the first major kills, not the opening scene, but the first major kill with the guy who gets split and just like it spills out. Great. The first time I watched it, I was like, oh, this is what kind of movie we are. Okay. Like you went further, because some of the look, like the lighting of it, it's bright. And, you know, I mentioned the made for TV. Sometimes you see that and you think, oh, okay, it's going to be toned down. It's going to be cut. It's going to be more of a TV 14 or something like that. And no, she goes all out on this, and you get to see some great stuff.
When it comes to her work, I would understand if some people find kind of a conflict of tone, I guess, with the way she presents it, which I totally get. For me, it works, though, because would I love to see her films look a little more gritty and whatnot? Absolutely. I think it would fit the way that she leans towards gore a bit more.
Yeah, I agree with that.
But it does make for kind of a nice surprise, right? Because you are watching this film that looks so clean and so polished that once you do get to the gore, it's like, oh, holy shit. Like,
this is for real.
You know, this is some shit that's like gorier than you would see in the original Scream, right? It feels like we're in a really low budget but well done practical effects, like 80s movie, right? Where it's just
and most of it, for the most part, it's all practical too. Like there's a couple CG blood pieces. Yeah,
some CG blood splash, but for the most part, Esterhazy likes to go for the gore with practical effects, and you can tell that she's a really big horror fan too, with with how a lot of it's presented, because, you know, and I'm sure there's a lot of stuff that I even missed, but like with all of these kills too, you know, they all kind of reference, I think, kind of iconic moments in slasher history, because like the one that you mentioned, that doesn't quite ring a bell automatically to me, but it feels a little bit like something you might see in Friday the 13th, right?
Oh yeah.
But then later on, you've got the incense ball that looks like the ball from Phantasm,
Yes.
right? That
smashes into her head.
Yeah, that just gets thrown into her skull, and that reminds me of a couple specific like images from Phantasm. And then you also have the killer throwing around what I think must have been it's some kind of pole, but it looks like a damn javelin. And,
yes.
you know, that brought me back to like Fatal Games and how that's, you know, how that movie just has a killer run around with a javelin the whole time. So, and I mean, Fatal Games is a little bit more of a deep cut too, right? So like you really get the sense that she is a director who loves horror.
Yeah. I like that it isn't a killer just either with a knife or a certain weapon it uses every time. Like every one of them is something different. You have, you know, someone gets sliced, someone gets the head crush, you get the javelin type the pole, and it's not the same.
Yeah, there's a good variety. And then you know, the killers do have a weapon that fits the theme of the movie, because I believe that the knife they're usually carrying around has kind of like a cross-shaped hilt, which, I mean, you know, hilts are kind of cross-shaped as is, so it's not totally obvious, but but it does kind of have like that look to it a little bit.
Now, what did you think of? Basically, we kind of got two twists a little bit in the movie. The brother sister, who they find out have a relationship together, and I love the faces they make when they're stuck in the room when they're having sex, and they're just like, as they're walking out, like just creeped and like, I don't want to touch anything, and just like, creeping out of the room.
Very, very uncomfortable, you could say.
Yes. That and the just the ending with the parents and everything else. Did you see either of those kind of happening?
The sex between the siblings, yes. Because it's I mean, I'm pretty sure it's even discussed or hinted at earlier before we actually see that happening. So that was one where I felt like, okay, yeah, they're definitely sleeping together.
Oh yeah.
And and I'll say something about that in a sec. But the parents being in on it, I will say no, I didn't quite see that coming the first time around. And it's interesting because it conflicts with itself a little bit, because I feel like if the whole plan essentially is like, well, they're all just gonna die, like I don't really know why we're going through the whole camp motions and everything, you know.
Yeah.
Like the premise in that regard's a little bit wonky, but thematically, I love the idea that the parents are the ones behind it and doing the killing, because, you know, it's a sad thing that like the sort of overbearing parents like that look at their child's sexuality as something that they have to like control or inhibit. In a sense, I mean, those parents are kind of killing their kids already, right? Like they're, you know, like Cammy, long before she's at this camp, I mean, her dad's basically dehumanizing her to a sense where like he doesn't give her any agency over her body or herself at all. So
he won't even talk to her. She even makes the comment of like, why can't you just talk to me instead of sending me away? Like, can we talk about it? And he's like, nope.
Right, exactly. And it's just such a shame. Like, you know, I can't speak to it. I'm not a parent, so I don't know what that conversation would be like. But I can say, just from my own experience having been a teenager, like I think I also would have liked to feel a little bit more like I was allowed to express myself in that sense, right? Like to have somebody that you could talk to about it that kind of knew what they were talking about without talking down to you or wanting to limit and inhibit you. So.
The ending, I'm with you. I didn't see the parents coming and that whole kind of twist to it. I did love how it ended though, with them coming together, and then, you know, they end with it and they call themselves the Whores of Babylon, and they're just like going after them all. I was like, you ended it kind of on a perfect note almost to me. Like you stuck the landing, I guess you could say.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, again, this is like the fun thing about the film, right? Is that it is about these women taking back their sexual power, and and taking back their agency. And so, it's kind of the thing of like, all right, if the church is going to refer to us as whores, like, fine, we're going to take that label and then we're going to turn it back on you by kicking your ass, as the whores of Babylon.
As the whores of Babylon.
And even though not all of them survive, I think usually fans would be disappointed by a slasher where so many people do survive. It works here because it's a really positive feeling, I feel like, to see all of these women, plus Eugene, who also gets to have a bit of a redemption arc, which I liked, to see all of them kind of come together and be like, hey, fuck you guys. We're not going to deal with this anymore.
It's not just one final girl. You don't just get a final girl and then it's over. You get...
Yeah, it's final women and boy.
Yeah, and boy. Who Eugene looked like he was much older than the rest of them.
Yeah, I think he's supposed to be his sister's younger brother, or maybe he is her older brother.
They made a comment of like him being the older brother, and I was like, we can tell.
That's right, but she runs the thing. But yes, he does look, a little bit older than the rest of the cast. That's fine. We still like Eugene.
Yeah.
But yeah, the brother and sister thing. So the thing that I thought was interesting about that, aside from just how unnerving and gross it is, again, this is kind of a film about the church's sort of boxing in of women and how they're supposed to serve like certain roles or whatever. Like, that character Tawny, she makes a great comment early on where they're talking about, where I think Eugene mentions that at the camp, the boys get up at like 6 a.m. to go forage for ingredients or whatever, and then the girls cook.
And then the women cook.
Yeah, and Tawny's
that's
like...
their roles.
Yeah, Tawny's like, we're teaching them the roles as presented by the Bible, or however she says it. And, first of all, fuck you. Like, that's a lot of nonsense. But I feel like element of their relationship and the fact that throughout the film, we're seeing women who are unsatisfied by their male partners, and Tawny, on the other hand, seems to be just fine with her relationship with Eugene. I wondered if part of that was maybe that, is Tawny actually satisfied? Like, is she leaving these encounters satisfied, or is she just kind of
this is what
going with the idea of the Bible of like, I'm here to serve him or whatever, and my own pleasure doesn't really matter. Like, it's... I don't know. I sort of wondered about that.
There's definitely parts that kind of feel that way, because she just kind of, the way it's just forceful. Okay, we got to do this, and then it's done.
Right, and that's the other kind of fun thing about all of these encounters in this movie, right? Is like they're very short.
Yes, they are.
The men in the film are not exactly marathon runners.
No. You got to get to the killing.
Yeah, we don't have time for this. Hurry up and finish. Which I do love too, that Cammy's goes through this film where she's frustrated that she hasn't had an orgasm yet, and lo and behold, after these men that she's been with, it turns out to be Wyatt, who finally gets her off, which I also thought was kind of brilliant, because it's like, yeah, a lot of these men, especially teenage boys, just are not very good at it. Right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. And she made the point of like, she doesn't allow herself to let go, basically. And I think she felt like, oh, I can let go with her. Like, this is okay. This is fine. And it's okay to let go with another woman. It's fine. And which is great.
Yeah. It's a feeling of like, it's like for the first time she feels comfortable, I feel like.
Ever since her mom died. I think after her mom died, I think is when, for her, things kind of got hard. I mean, it definitely...
Right. Well, especially when her dad starts, making her read a bunch of Bible verses that say she's a sinner and all that kind of stuff.
And I love that she's throwing the Bible verses back at them and like, well, it doesn't actually say that. You added words. Are you actually going to eat your children too? And this and that, throwing other verses. And they're just like...
Yeah, no, she's just throwing their hypocrisy back at them, right? Because that's so much of what organized religion in the Bible is just hypocrisies.
Do you have anything else on killer body count you want to talk about?
Just, being a millennial, there was a moment in this movie that I just want to add because I thought it was funny, but it made me feel so fucking old, was was when they find their cell phones burned, which very tragic moment because Cammy has all of her mother's pictures on her phone, so it's very sad.
Well, the first thing went to my brain was like, well, she's probably got them in the cloud, right?
Well, we would hope so, but based on her face, I don't know if she remembered that. But yeah, they have to go use a landline to call the cops, and when the two of them run into the cabin and they're like, how do you use this thing? It's just like, oh my God.
They're like, I saw it on Stranger Things.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw a landline in Stranger Things. Just like, oh my God. This world is too digital.
No, it would be. Because if I put something like that in front of my kids, especially a rotary one, they'd be like, what do I do? Like, how do you dial?
Yeah, I mean, like the rotary, I can at least mildly understand of like, okay, if you've never seen one before, maybe you wouldn't know how to use it. But for God's sakes, a landline telephone has all the numbers right there. You just
push the buttons the same way as yours.
It's not complicated.
No, I found that very funny. I know they cracked the joke earlier in the movie where she cracked a joke of like, what's a landline, just to be funny, but then you get the actual moment in the movie. They kind of called
where
it
they
back.
had to actually use a landline. It's like, oh God, what do we do? Well, actually, I will use that to really quick say too, because you had mentioned this, and I don't know if we talked about it too much, but speaking of the phone and the tragedy of that, you were right when you were saying like Esterhazy does have a really good ability, and we shouldn't leave the writer Jessica Landry out of this as well, because she obviously wrote a fun script, but they do a really great job of kind of balancing the humor and the seriousness of it, because you laugh and you really engage with the humor of it. And then at the same time, like you do really feel, I think, some of those more tragic beats, like, like her finding out that her father was behind all of this, or like the moment where they punish Cammy for going out in the middle of the night by, stripping her, basically down to her underwear and making her kneel on rocks. Like, stuff like that is really traumatic, and it's really hard to watch, and so it does a good job of, I think, really punching you with some moments that hit a lot harder than you expect from a film like this.
Oh, absolutely. That's why I love that teeter-totter back and forth.
Yeah.
It just, they meshed it well to where you're not like, oh, some films try it and you're just like, no, it didn't work. You went too far into the campy silliness, and then you're trying to come back, and it doesn't work.
It's a really difficult balance to strike, and I always commend filmmakers that can accomplish it, because it is not easy.
Yeah. I am excited to see what Esterhazy has in store for us next. Like, for me, these, Banana Splits, Slumber Party, and this, I'm like, you know what? I'm all in for I'll follow what you do. I'm glad you mentioned the Banana Splits movie, because I thought that was really fun. It was.
We want to talk about like animatronic killer animatronics. I enjoyed that more than Five Nights at Freddy's, if I'm being honest.
It's far better than Five Nights at Freddy's, people. I loved it much more than Willy's Wonderland too.
Same. Yeah. Like I think Five Nights at Freddy's is fun for kids. I think it's a really good kind of gateway horror. And Willy's Wonderland, I'll admit, I'm one who's not as big of a fan of that, but
I thought it was fine.
Yeah, it was fine. But if you want like good killer animatronic gory movie, because Esterhazy brings her gore to that as well.
Yep. I think it's underrated and underseen movie that people need to check out.
Yeah, absolutely. That one flew way too under the radar for me.
It did. All right, anything else you want to talk about? Killer body count? What would you, out of 5, what would you give Killer body count? I
believe I gave it a 3, because I think that, 3 stars for me is kind of when I'm like, it's fun. It's a fun movie. I'm not raving about it, but I think that it's a fun movie. I enjoy it. But it's not without its flaws. I like, the one thing that kills me with it personally is you gotta be really goddamn compelling to be a slasher movie that pushes 2 hours,
Yeah.
Not many can do it. The Scream movies for me are like a rare example of slasher films that can really push that. But an hour, 50 minutes for this is pushing it a little bit. I thought the pacing could have been a bit better.
Yeah, there were a few times where it does start to dip, and you do kind of like see yourself like, okay, let's pick it up a little bit.
The pacing can be better. I mean, because there are moments where like the tension can be going well, and then we just kind of come to a halt.
Yeah.
which isn't always for a bad moment. I mean, like when we have Cammy and Wyatt finally hook up, I mean, they're running from a killer, like they've just witnessed someone be murdered, and they take the time to stop to, fool around, which I like the scene, but it definitely disrupts the pacing a bit.
Yeah. I landed the same as you. I landed at 3 stars, which, I mean, it's 3 out of 5. I think it's a solid movie. It's one of those that it's definitely rewatchable. Watching it again, I was like, oh, yeah, this is definitely a good, fun slasher rewatch that I would recommend to people. Like we said at the beginning, like Tubi is up in their game. I think they're getting some good directors, and it's kind of helping out too.
No, they are. They're giving some good directors a chance, and it feels like kind of letting them just do whatever they want to do, which is always great. I mean, that's what we want. Like, you're not always going to get a great result out of that, but I would rather see a filmmaker allowed to take risks and do what their vision is than to have people constantly stepping all over it. So.
As I'm wrapping things up, I usually give them another thing they can watch at home, because I'll say go check out Killer Body Count for sure. Is there anything else that you would suggest for people at home that they can go check out at home? I know there's a lot out there. I know we mentioned quite a few of them here at the beginning.
Cool. I'm just trying, I've got 1,000 titles that are streaming running through my head.
Is there anything that you've seen recently that you're like, ooh, you guys need to check this out, even if it's not out yet, if it's coming at home, of like, oh, watch for this, or...
Sure. So I'll mention stop motion just because I watched that recently on streaming, and I think it came to Shudder.
It should be on Shudder.
Yeah. I mean, I think it came there a little while ago, so I'm assuming anyone listening might have checked it out already by this point, but I'll mention stop motion just because I watched that recently. It's a film about a stop motion artist who, well, artist is a stretch of a word there. It's a film about a person who works with their mother in stop motion, who decides that after an incident with their mother that they want to make their own stop motion film, and essentially is a little bit losing their mind in the process.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit. So it's a really fascinating film. I think it's very well made, and I'm a huge sucker for anything stop motion. I really wanted to make a comeback in horror. So if you're into stop motion and you appreciate those effects, it's definitely a film I recommend. If you like the old Ray Harryhausen stuff and whatever. But yeah, I just found it to be a really fascinating, very creepy, frightening movie. So psychological horror is your jam. Check it out.
Yes, it is. It is one that can get under your skin.
Mm-hmm.
And they did a very good job of this torment and darkness and everything else that's going on.
Yeah, there's a few things that happen in that film that'll definitely get you cringing a little bit.
Yes, absolutely. Well, mine, I'm just going to tell people, just go check out the Banana Splits movie. It needs more eyes on it. It's so much fun. So much fun.
Really fun movie. That one honestly surprised me with how much I enjoyed it.
Now, wait, where can people find your stuff out there on online?
Oh yeah, let's see. Get the list going here. So you can follow me on Twitter. I'll never call it X. At Killer Critics.
None of us will.
Just so stupid. I'll never understand the name change. Yeah, you can follow me there at Killer Critics. I have a website where I do a bunch of horror reviews, killerhorrorcritic.com. I do a bunch of writing for Dread Central, so you can just search me there. I have columns at Daily Grindhouse and Manor Vellum, so you can check me out there as well. And then I'm going to promote this because I'm super proud of it and it's exciting. I wrote an essay for the upcoming Arrow video release of the Friday the 13th remake, so definitely pick that up.
It looks awesome.
Yeah, they did an amazing job with the release. There's lots of new extras and commentaries and whatnot that I think anyone who's a fan of that film will really want to check out. So please pick that up. and read my essay if you feel like it. I don't know if people read those things or not, but
hey, you got one in there, and that's awesome.
I got one in there. That's what matters. Yeah. No.
Well, Matt, thank you again for joining me to talk Killer Body Count with me. Hopefully, you'll want to come back again and chat something with me sometime down the road.
Yeah, of course. This was a blast. And I'm glad to be able to come on here and talk about a film that I don't feel like got enough love during its release. So
no, I agree, because it kind of came out in the Slay Lowlife's time and kind of fell underneath those.
Right, exactly. And I do like those a little bit more than this one, but I still think this is a really fun movie that anyone who wants something a little bit different with the slasher genre, you should check this out.
As I head out, I want to say bring home A Quiet Place day one. Buy it on digital now. Lupita Nyong'o and Joseph Quinn star in the film critics say is packed with nail-biting tension and thrills. Included with over 50 minutes of behind-the-scenes footage and deleted scenes, written and directed by Michael Sarnowski. A little giveaway for you guys if anyone wants a digital copy of Quiet Place Day 1. First come, first serve. Just shoot me an email at oldmanbradpodcast@gmail.com. And like I said, first come, first serve. It's yours. All right, well, that will do it for another Tales from Tubi. Just make sure you subscribe to Old Man Brad, and you'll never miss any episode that comes out. Just snuggle up in that blanket, turn off the lights, because it's okay to be scared. We'll talk to you later, everybody.